I use Daoist philosophy in the way that I design clothing, and it's created some really interesting pieces, but primarily it's created constraints that I have to work within that I think have made my clothing more interesting to look at. First is Wu Wei, it's concealment and non-forcing. The clothes that I wear and design are directly influenced by 90s skatewear, which was very oversized. It was, heavier. The pieces were usually hand-me-downs from an older sibling. But in my case, the reason that I use very oversized silhouettes is not necessarily just because of that DNA, but also because of the principle of non-forcing. I feel like very constrictive clothing or tight clothing tends to really put the body on display, and I have nothing against putting the body on display. In fact, I have nothing against being outright provocative or sexy or even just full nudity. Like, wear whatever you want, show your body off however you want. However, for me, I prefer clothing that does not accentuate my body, but rather feels like a sheet draped over it. It is letting my body be sculptural in a sense, or architectural. In this case, I use fabrics that are very heavy. I use seamless construction to create a very unique looking silhouette that isn't just focused on tightly showing off what's underneath. Rather, the piece of clothing becomes the focus. And in this case, this allows people who are maybe less extroverted to sort of hide behind the clothing. The clothing is itself beautiful, it is interesting, it's unique, but in a sense, it's like if you're robbing a bank and you wear like a really strange fake mustache. People are so focused on the mustache, they don't see you. And the same is true for the clothes that I design in some cases. For example, the Grave Bloom hoodie is so extroverted and loud that people focus on the hoodie, not necessarily who's wearing it, unless you are someone who's also extremely extroverted and loud, in which case you get to wear the hoodie as a magnifying glass for who you are. And that principle of non-forcing works with what I design. I am creating clothes that allow themselves to be whatever you want them to be, and allows you to not have to feel like you're performing for the world around you. If you're like, I just ate 3 slices of pizza. I'm wearing my new Eclipse hoodie that's going to be available soon. And in this sense, like, it's very oversized, it's very loose, the body is very wide. I have a food baby, and you'd never see it. Whereas if I'm wearing a tight hoodie, I would be sucking in, I'm ashamed of how I look, or I'm self-conscious maybe of, is my body lumpy in the wrong spots? Is the hoodie riding up? Whereas with this Daoist philosophy of Wu Wei, of non-forcing, I can put on this hoodie and allow it to speak for itself, and it doesn't require my body to speak for itself, which I think is really beautiful. The second is the long lines and the seamless drape. It creates flow and Dao. Dao is part of Daoism, obviously, which is like the way, water flowing through things, effortlessness or naturalness of being. And in this case, the reason I use very heavy fabrics that drape and flow, as opposed to lighter fabrics that kind of cling to your body and accentuate your shape, is because that shapelessness, that formlessness, really allows a person to create whatever they want of the clothes that they're wearing. If someone wants to wear a corset over a hoodie, which I've seen, then they can, and they can accentuate their body. Or if they want to allow the fabrics to drape and create these long, beautiful lines down to the legs, this parallelism, and that's available as well. This Daoism let the eye travel without constraint. It doesn't force you to go look at things. It allows you to move along in a journey when you're looking at a piece. And to me, that's really beautiful. I like when a piece of clothing creates this sort of journey for the eye, as opposed to something that creates hard stops and constraints. That's why I don't like pinstripes very much. I don't like checks. I just feel like it's too busy and your eye is scattered all over, racing around trying to make sense of what you're looking at. The interesting thing about these heavy fabrics and these long lines is that I tend to stray away from seams. So if you can notice, there's no shoulder seams on this piece. It's just one big flat expanse on the front and the back. And the seams that you can see are sort of concealed on the top. No one's going to see these seams unless they're looking down directly at you, or if your arms are at the sides, then they are concealing the inner seams and just letting the outer seams show. And I think that it shows the sort of effortlessness and naturalness in the clothing, as opposed to seeing the marks of construction in the seams. It makes it feel more like an artifact and not something that was effortfully designed and constructed. And I think that that's something that people don't register. A lot of people, when I tell them that this hoodie doesn't have seams or my t-shirts don't have seams, they go, oh, what, really? And then they look again, because when your arms are at the sides, there's already a natural division. But it is something they subconsciously notice. Your brain is processing about 100 bits of information per second, and your subconscious is processing about 11 million bits of information per second. So there's just this vast difference in how someone perceives you in a way that they might not even notice that they're perceiving you. Just like someone might perceive your smell or your energy, your aura, in a sense. And I think that the clothing should help accentuate that. Third that I do is hidden symbolism, meaning in jokes. Daoism is a full religion, of course, and it's not one that I particularly practice, but my brand is an occult brand. Occultism comes from the word occlude, or shadow, and occultism is a name for a large circle of beliefs and ideas that it's sort of all-encompassing, but it essentially means hidden or hidden secrets. And I think that every piece of clothing should not necessarily have to explain itself. It's like a difference between an A24 horror movie and like a Marvel movie. Nothing against Marvel movies. My friends like them. I watch them sometimes. But Marvel movies tend to be very explanatory. This is the bad guy. Whereas, something that's a little bit less attuned for a wide audience is going to be less interested in being understood by everyone. And that's the same for my clothes. This is the Eclipse hoodie. It's the design behind it, or the idea behind it, is that in the light, the sun shows, and in the darkness, if I were to turn this light off, the sun would disappear and all you would see are the stars glittering, just like a real eclipse works, right? But this is not necessarily something that I'm going to deeply explain to a lot of people. It's something that people can figure out for themselves. And if you buy this hoodie and you wear it, you don't need to explain it to someone else either. Instead, you can just let them look first and see just a black hoodie, and then look closer and see the sun graphic or the big logo on the back, or see the way the stars glitter when you move your arms. And that sort of hidden meaning, or the deeper, requiring more time to understand it, I think is more beautiful. And that is a principle of the Tao, is that truth does not reveal itself immediately. Instead, it must be something that is focused on and pursued, and something that you are deliberately trying to ascertain. And I think that makes it a little bit more beautiful. And another example of an in-joke is a woodblock tee that I released in season 2. The back of the shirt shows an old anatomy textbook page with a skeleton, and it says the skeleton of the back. And it's just kind of funny if you think about it, because it's the back of the skeleton anatomy book from the 1500s on the back of the shirt. Is it groundbreaking humor? No. But it is something that if you think about it, it's mildly amusing. But if you're just walking behind someone wearing that shirt, you just think, oh, well, there's a skeleton on the back. And I think that kind of forcing people to think deeper about a piece's meaning or the clothes is, kind of interesting to me. Same with the lunacy tee that I have, the moon pierced by lightning bolts. Of course, lunacy comes from the word luna, which means moon, which I think everybody pretty much knows. I'm not trying to be like, hidden codes and layers deep, but something that just requires a little bit more thought, a little bit more intrigue. This hoodie was actually going to be called the Solace hoodie for a while, until I thought Eclipse fit it better. But Solace, there's a crying sun, a weeping sun, but Sol, S-O-L, can mean shit out of luck, and it can also mean sun, which I thought was funny. So there's just a lot of hidden meanings in the clothes that I create that allow people to either explain the jokes to someone who comprehends or complements their clothes, or it allows someone to just have that meaning with them. I think that the best things in life are not openly explained to everyone around them. So anyway, this is not strict Daoism. I'm not a Daoist, just to be clear. I believe a lot of the principles of Daoism are universal. This is kind of Zen as well. In some senses, it's monastic, a little bit medievalist. This probably has as much to do with the simplicity of the habits of a Benedictine or Franciscan monk as it does with a Daoist monk in, China in the year 800. But all told, I think that these principles have created a beautiful and visual and recognizable design language for my clothes that people understand implicitly, but they don't necessarily have the words to express. They aren't able to really tell me why they can recognize a minimum garment, and they just know that they can. They can see the drape of a hoodie. They can see the drape of a t-shirt and go, yeah, that's a minimum that's a minimum hoodie, and not necessarily have the words to explain why. Anyway, if you're a designer, I hope that this helped you. If you're just someone who likes my clothes, then I hope that you enjoyed this little deep dive. I'm gonna try and do more of these little design talks in the future. So if you'd like that, go ahead and like, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what kind of design ethos you'd like me to explore in the future, and I'd be happy to do it.